Thank you, everyone, for your patience as we navigated our way through some technical issues, but I am calling this meeting back to order, the Committee on Planning. And really, I believe, did we get through all the testifiers? We're good to go with that?
Sorry, Madam Chair. Yeah, sorry. Yes, we are.
Okay, great. And then with that, I'll turn to you to read in the
Sounds
first
good.
bill.
Thank you, Chair. Bill 181 amends ordinance number 06-82, which reclassified lands from agriculture 20 acres A20A to family agriculture 3 acres FA-3A at Kolokomalka subdivision, North Kona, Hawaii, covered by tax map key 7-3-024008. Applicant Clinton Hinchcliffe Jr., area 21.992 acres. The Leeward Planning Commission forwards its favorable recommendation for this amendment, which would in part allow a 5-year time extension to comply with Condition D, final subdivision approval, amend Condition E, restrictive covenants, and delete Condition J, improvements to Koloko Drive, Mamalohoa Highway intersection. The property is located along the south side of Koloko Drive at the northeastern corner of its intersection with Howe Street, Kolokomalka subdivision, North Kona, introduced by Ms. Kirkowitz by request, and Communication 2829.1 from Planning Director Zendo Kern dated May 10, 2022, transmitting the transcripts from the Leeward Planning Commission's April 21, 2022 meeting, and Communication 829.2 from Planning Director Zendo Kern dated May 11, 2022, transmitting a comment letter dated April 19, 2022 from the State Department of Transportation.
Motion to forward Bill 181 to Council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Thank you. It's been motioned by Councilmember Inaba and seconded by Councilmember Leloy. With that, I'll go ahead and invite representative of the development. Thank you, Mr. Fouquet, for joining us here today. Got it.
Got it.
Good morning.
Good morning, Vice Chair, members of this committee. My name is Sidney Fouquet. I'm a planning consultant. I'm here assisting Mr. Clinton Hinchcliffe. He's a local boy, born and raised here in the Kona side. He has a number of small businesses over here. The primary intent behind this rezoning application is about time extension, is really to enable him to, finalize a subdivision that he, got involved in a number of years ago, got settled in litigation. And finally, in the year 2020, things got settled, and then he was able to proceed, only to find out that the time had expired. His intention is if approved, it'll ultimately be a 7-lot subdivision. He wants to be able to reserve couple of the lots for his 2 children, one for himself and one for his father, and basically have the other 2 or 3 lots available for sale to help underwrite the cost for developing the subdivision. We are requesting that additional time, and he's kind of prepared to go ahead and finalize the subdivision, should the council approve the time extension. During the course of the Planning Commission hearing, there was some public testimony and also one which was raised today, dealing with the question about the intersection at the Koloko Drive intersection. And, we're more than prepared to answer that. Or if the council prefer me to just begin the dialogue, I would be more than happy to do so, but I'll defer to, Madam Vice Chair on this. But aside from that, it's pretty much like a straightforward. If you look at the zone map, the surrounding area is all currently zone FA3A, so which is similar to what Mr. Hinchcliffe's proposal is. But I'm available for any questions you might have. For your added information, Mr. Hinchcliffe is seated in the back. And the reason why I wanted to help him is that we both have the same hairdo, so that kind of helps. There's some kind of affinity, so anyway. But yeah, I'll open ourselves up for questions, and he's in a position to answer any questions you may have as well.
Thank you, Mr. Fouquet. I appreciate that. At this time, any of my colleagues have any questions or comments? Mr. Inaba.
Yeah, thank you. Do we have Director Kern on the line? Or anyone from planning? Yes, good morning, Director Kern. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning.
Just wanted to see if you could explain a little bit about condition. Oh my, I just lost it. Okay. G3 with regards to the 20% cleared or grubbing. Just for the record, that's a new addition to this bill.
Sure. So G, right, the forest management plan?
Yes.
Yeah, no problem. That's been a standard condition that's been going in this area for properties that exceed, I believe, the 28 to 3,000 feet elevation. And the real intent of that is to, develop that forest management plan and maintain at least 80% of the land area in native forest. That does allow for invasives to be removed and replenished with natives. And so that's been a consistent condition.
Yep. Director
I've been aware
Kern,
of.
hang on. You're coming in a little soft.
Okay, sorry, I'm on a different computer. Would that help if I talk louder?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So that is for that area that has been a consistent condition. Shoots, I can't exactly how long, but at least the last, I want to say at least 10 years or so. And the goal there is that above a certain elevation of around 3,000 feet, it's a requirement that that area be kept with at least the 80% of the native forest. That can be invasives can be taken out, replenished with the natives, but that's the real concept, is to keep that area, forested.
Okay, thank you. And then for condition J, which we're removing, that was holding the building permit until improvements at the Mamalahoa Kaloka Drive intersection are completed. And previously, there were some options as to what improvements would be included. I know you and I have had conversation with the Department of Transportation, but I do see a letter in our packet here saying that the state is not responsible for improvements to this intersection, and that runs contrary to my understanding based on the meetings we've had. So what can you explain a little bit about what's going on there?
Sure. And I would say that is correct, that letter would be contrary to the meeting that we had. I was able to convene a meeting. Yourself was there. We had DPW as well as the Hawaii HDOT, Hawaii Department of Transportation. And they're in the process of doing a TIAR, a traffic impact analysis report for 2 intersections along there, this Kalopa being one of them. And I'm sure you can confirm this, that, in that conversation, it was really, we want to look at it. They wanted to look at it. They wanted to analyze the traffic pattern. And then from there, there'd be a recommendation on what was supposed to have been done there. And my understanding is that they want to move forward with those improvements. We have a fund balance through basically this fair share contribution for this intersection sitting in reserve there. And so the goal is to work with them and be able to help out with some of the fundings for that intersection, depending on what comes out. It might be signalized, it might just be channelized. And so I would say that letter is very contrary to the conversation that we had. It is a state road in that area. So my understanding is that it is their responsibility to do that, yet we're willing to help because we know that the need is there and we have some funds through this process.
Okay, and does this bill before us add any more to that improvement fund, the fair share fund?
Yes, it would. It would basically be the 15,000 per. So that will increase that balance by the multiplication of those numbers.
Okay, thank you. Well, for the applicant, I know there were, legal proceedings that held this up. Mr. Fuge, being that you're at the table, what is the plan moving forward to make sure that we're not here again in 5 years or 10 years if a extension is granted administratively?
I understand. If I could just kind of amplify on some of the, your questions and the responses. On the intersection question, at this point in time, there's like about $677,000. And with if the rezoning is approved and ultimately prior to receipt of final subdivision approval, there's an obligation to provide the fair share. That fair share comes out to an additional $90,000. And so presumably within the next couple of years, you might have like in excess of $750,000. The regrettable thing is that, that the so-called problematic intersection falls under the jurisdiction of the state. The county has the money, but the state doesn't. So at the planning commission meeting, the discourse was, with the director as well as the staff members and the commission was essentially to say like, well, county, can you, Public Works, get together with the state to figure out exactly, how to spend this money? We're willing to provide at least $750,000. Sure, you may not necessarily have like the so-called BMW version of an intersection improvement, but it's something can be done to at least make that area much more palatable from a safety standpoint. Then please feel free to use the funds. And I think what the director had indicated is that the state is in the process of doing a traffic assessment to figure out what kind of mitigation can be had. And once that mitigation program is developed, then the county, I believe, would stand ready to exercise the release of those funds, which requires a council approval, by the way, because it's the money that the county has right now. But that's in the area of like $750,000. If you look at the whole scheme of that particular area, and that's your area, you travel up and down, that Calooca intersection, has some problems, but in my mind, just traveling through that area this morning, Kaimianani Street is even worse. And that also belongs to the state highway. And so that's not signalized. So I was looking at Kaimianani Street, I was looking at Calooca, I'm saying like, well, what kind of improvements can be made? I'm not an engineer. And so that's where the assessment comes out, and the ability to utilize those funds, I think would be great. The other thing, you asked the question about the, condition regarding the 20% grading the area. As the director indicated, there was really like two primary motivation behind such a condition. And this is way back when, started about 15, 20 years ago. They were like, one was designed to, because it's heavily forested in that area, there is a potential for nesting by the Hawaiian owl or the Hawaiian hawk. So you need to kind of provide that opportunity. The twin objective was if the whole property was going to be denuded, then there's a potential of losing a relatively precious watershed. And so through this condition, that it helps enable the preservation of those two, those twin objectives. And that's the reason for that condition.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll just state for the record, there is significant concern regarding the intersection by Calooca residents and even others from the community who use that intersection, and that TIAR is being done by the state, not just for Calooca intersection, but for Kaimianani as well. So we're hoping to have that done in August. I'll be following up with Director Kern. We have another meeting scheduled with DOT. But with that, I'll be supporting this project. It is in my district, and it is an opportunity for the applicant to, create a space for his ohana. And I just look forward to taking care of the intersection problem in the best way possible. So thank you, Mr. Fuki, for being here. Thank you, Director Kern. Chair, I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Inaba. Ms. Liloy.
Thank you. I'm just going to follow the recommendation of the council member from the district, but I just want to renew Director Kern these time extensions. Oftentimes, a lot of the conditions that are required have a different time clock. So some of these conditions are with State Department of Forestry, State Historic Preservation Division, and I'm just going to renew my request if there's ways for us to somehow either help them expedite the conditions of approval and or stop the clock when it's not on the applicant and it's with an agency, so that they can successfully complete these projects. They're done with a lot of work, a lot of forethought. These conditions are placed on them that help enhance the community and some of the community needs. And so I'm just going to renew that again, Director. Thank you, Chair. I yield.
Thank you, Ms. Leloy. Anyone else at this time? Mr. Carnegie Kleinfeld.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here today, Mr. Kern. This is a 21-acre parcel, correct? A little bit more than 21 acres.
Correct.
And they're going for 6 or 7 lots?
7 lots, 6 additional.
6 additional. How many water credits do they have?
My understanding is they have the water credits that would be necessary to do the project.
If I can answer that, yes, they do have 7 water units and the commitments have already been paid for.
Okay, thank you. And then why the push for family ag? Not that it's wrong, but I just interested
Because I
from my own
think that
knowledge.
the zoning code was amended to the point where, at one point in time, anything was always ag, ag 1, ag 2, ag 3. But then the code was amended to say if your properties were, if the area was going to be like less than 5 acre, but in agricultural zone, then the category now is no longer A3, but it is FA, family ag.
Okay, Mr. Kern?
That's completely accurate. Yes.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carnegie Kleinfelder. Chair David.
Thank you, Vice Chair Villegas. Aloha. I think
Aloha.
this is a question for Director Kern. Director Kern, can you clarify that this lot, I'm looking at the map. At what elevation does the 80% forest preservation kick in? Do you know? I know it's basically not at the very bottom of Coloco Drive, but at some point, do you recall?
Yeah, I do. I'm pulling it up right now. Maya, if you have that right available on your end, maybe you could jump in here, but I know we have it here.
Because I'm looking at the map, it seems like it's almost halfway up up Coloco Drive, but I know
That's
that there's an
correct.
elevation provision for
I
that.
can respond to that.
Thank you.
So the County Council passed Resolution 9758 in 1997. And it basically said that any rezonings above the 3,000-foot elevation in Coloco-Mauka or above the 2,500 foot elevation elsewhere in the Kona, North and South Kona districts will not allow rezones to less than 20 acres. And then it also established in Coloco-Mauka above the 3,000 foot elevation a forest management plan. And that requires that 80% of the property be maintained in forest. It establishes some setbacks from the roadways and other requirements to preserve the native forest.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. That kind of restores my memory about this. Thanks for clarifying that. And I'm looking at the conditions in this application. So because there's the restrictions in this application and the conditions, this lot does fall within that preservation area then?
I believe so. It actually may be a little bit below that elevation, but it's been a standard practice of the planning department as well as the commission and council to apply that even at lower elevations in
Okay.
order to preserve the Coloco forest.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that refreshment course. I yield. Mahalo.
Thank you, Chair David. Anyone else at this time? Nope. Okay, I just have a couple of questions. So you mentioned that there was some complications in title or ownership that was the cause for the delay.
Yeah, so, he had, Mr. Hinchcliffe, got involved in investing with the property, with another, with the former owner developer. And there was ultimately a falling out. And that litigation took anyway in excess of 5 years to get settled. And so in the meantime, the land just sat there. You know, in spite of the fact that they received tentative subdivision approval. And then I think in the year 2010, 2011, then that's when he elected to participate in it, you know, for the benefit of his children and his family. Then the litigation started. And so it probably up until like 2018 or so, things finally got, you know, it worked its way out, and then he's in a position to freely kind of make this application.
Okay, so, but what's before us right now is a time extension.
Correct, yes.
Okay, for another 5 years.
For another 5 years, yes.
Okay. Which is a challenge for council in just the fact that we've recognized the pattern and the habit of time extensions causing some complications when it comes to appropriate planning and development. Sounds like this is related just to family and a prior business associate. You know, growing up here, the intersection at Coloco is a deadly intersection. We lost, you know, the founder of Lava Man Triathlon. And other people have been seriously injured at that intersection. So the difference between the Coloco intersection and Kaimi Nani intersection is there are no pull-out lanes or merging areas. So there is a dire need for something to happen there before the potential of, you know, what if you got 7 lots, let's say two cars per lot. I mean, that's just adding a lot of traffic to the area, and I don't want to see anybody else die. I don't want another friend to grow up without his father because of the blind. So I was just in Coloco on Thursday gathering for the weekend for the parade and whatnot, and really felt that even coming out at that time. So I know the Coloco community is really tight. I want to also thank you for being vigilant about maintaining the forest there. In driving down just the other day, I noted some of the parcels that are currently being bulldozed to create house lots are not maintaining that 60-foot forest zone from the road going back. And, you know, I would have to look up why or what their conditions were, but it's tragic. This is one of the last cloud forests on the planet. And the EAEA and our native species are suffering as it dries out with the elimination of the forest. I'm really grateful that the practices have changed and adjusted, because for a while, people were buying the lots and just bulldozing the whole thing. And we can't afford to do that anymore. So thank you for including all of those requirements here. I had one question about W5, which seems to be a new addition. If the applicant should require an additional extension of time, the planning director shall submit the applicant's request to the county council for appropriate action. And I just wondered if that's normal protocol and that's normally included in things, and does that responsibility normally fall to the planning director?
Well, in years past, you know, the planning director, you know, based on the original ordinance, was given the ability to make an initial administrative extension. What this does is explicitly remind everybody that if you don't comply with the time constraints, then, you know, we're going to have to go before the same body. That's what this condition states.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that. The other thing I just wanted a little bit, I noticed the inclusion of the archaeological field inspection and historic resources. And then, and this is just a point of question about protection for the EO and for the Blackburn Sphinx moth, and then the Hawaiian hoary bats. But then it talks about the nene and seabirds. And I just wondered if that was specific to this property, because I wasn't aware that there were nene in Coloco. Or is this just kind of an inclusion as a broader?
Neither was I, but I think, like what this is, like it's an embodiment of a standard comment that the state DLNR Forestry Division makes, and then it's somehow winds its way into almost like all application as conditions.
Great, great. Well, I'm happy to see it here because I think it's also top of mind as we continue to do our best to make responsible decisions when it comes to development and zoning and changes, and that we're held accountable for the species and the ecosystems that are impacted by those decisions. So I think, I'll be supporting this today, but I do think that there are some, I have concerns about this differing opinion with who has, where the responsibility lies for that intersection and the improvements. The further we put it off, the more chance for serious damage and loss of life. And nobody wants to see that happen. So thank you, Mr. Fouquet. And yes, Councilmember Inaba.
My apologies. Director Kern, in looking at section W, it just doesn't, the wording doesn't make sense to me because W says that the director is able to grant an extension of time. And we have our normal 1, 2, 3, 4 there, but the number 5, it says if the applicant should require an additional extension of time, the director shall submit the applicant's request to county council for appropriate action. So
Yeah.
Sure.
there's 2 different things being said here. One is that you are going to give the approval. The other is that we are going to give the approval. So I think unless I'm reading it wrong, this needs to be corrected.
So it's kind of saying both, that there's the ability for an administrative time extension, but beyond that, if they need time, then it has to come back to council. I could see how that's a little bit confusing. We can work on some language to clarify that.
I stand corrected. Yeah, in rereading it, it would seem like based on the way the language is crafted right now, it enables the planning director to grant an initial administrative extension. And over and beyond that would require the council's action. If on the other hand, the council is intent on not allowing the planning director to grant any administrative extension, the applicant would prefer the ability to have an administrative extension, but they can understand all this discussion about wanting to make sure that the development occurred in a rather timely fashion. In this particular situation, I know, based on conversations with Mr. Hinchcliffe, he has every intention of wanting to finish this thing sooner than later. So I'm sure that wouldn't, raise any objection on his part. But this is bottom line. We'll defer to the council.
Okay, thank you. Director Kern, yeah, maybe we can just clarify the language, maybe an additional extension or an extension beyond that of.
Beyond that, I'm thinking something like that too.
Just so it's very clear what is happening here. But happy to move this forward today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Inaba. Is that it from everyone? All right. All those in favor of forwarding Bill 181 to council with a positive recommendation, please say aye. Any opposed? We got 2, 4, 6 ayes and 2 excused. 3? Yes. 1 no. Yep. Gotcha. Oh, who's excused? We have Mr. Aaron Chung is excused, Mr. Matt Connealy Kleinfelder, and Councilmember Ashley Kirkowitz are excused. Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Bill 183 amends section 25-8-25. KL Zone Map, Article 8, Chapter 25, Zoning Code of the Hawaii County Code 1983, 2016 edition as amended by changing the district classification from single-family residential 10,000 square feet RS10 to village commercial 10,000 square feet CV10 at KL Puna, Hawaii, covered by tax map key 1-6-002-082. Applicant Lawrence Palmer, area 11 1,254 square feet. The Windward Planning Commission forwards its favorable recommendation for the change of zone, which would allow the applicant to establish a furniture and appliance retail outlet to include 2 showrooms, 2 bathrooms, a workshop, storage space, and a parking lot with 4 parking stalls, one of which will be ADA accessible. The property is located at 16-540 Laukahi Place, approximately 150 feet east of the intersection with Old Volcano Road in Kea'au, Puna, introduced by Ms. Kirkowitz by request, and Communication 832.1 from Deputy Planning Director Jeffrey W. Darrow, dated May 31, 2022, transmitting the transcripts from the Windward Planning Commission's May 5, 2022 meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. May I have a motion? It's been moved by Councilmember Leloy and seconded by Councilmember Inaba. Mr. Pippin, feel free to come and join us. Mr. Palmer? Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Go ahead and turn on the microphones and state your name for the record.
Lawrence Palmer.
Morning.
And my wife, Julie.
And your wife, Julie. Fantastic. Thanks for being here.
Morning, John Pippin, Land Planning Hawaii.
Thank you, Mr. Pippin.
Shall we
Yes,
proceed with our remarks?
dive right in.
Thank you, Vice Chair Villegas, County Council members. Really appreciate all you do for your communities, the care and dedication you show in your representation of those folks. Mr. and Mrs. Palmer, owners of Ross's Appliances and Furniture, and last year they came to us with a property they had just purchased in Kea'au with the idea to establish a appliance and furniture outlet store there. It had existing RS10 zoning, so we evaluated it against all the metrics, all the guidance documents. It looked good for a commercial rezone, being adjacent to existing CV10 zoning. To the east, there's a convenience and gas station. To the south, there's the HMSA administration complex. There's a school nearby, and even the RS10 zone property to the north is the site of a Hawaiian Telcom installation, a switching station. So there's not much in the way of potential impacts. You know, the lot has been cleared and developed residentially since 1990. Again, it's aligned with the Puna Community Development Plan. It's right in the Kea'au Village Center area, which is directed for additional growth and commercial uses. It's got a general plan LUPAG designation of mixed, low density and medium density urban. So all of these things are supportive of the request for commercial use and commercial zoning. All essential utilities and services are available to the property. It's cleared and flat and just makes a lot of sense. Let's see, properties over 3 miles from the coastline. You know, there's not any coastal hazards or shoreline erosion that we have to be concerned with. No impacts are anticipated to traditional customary Native Hawaiian practices. It's basically lawn with a single family residence on it. At the Planning Commission, we had requested to defer conditioned improvements, curb gutter sidewalk, utility relocation, just based on the very low impact anticipated by the proposed use of a furniture appliance outlet store. We're kind of jokingly imagine folks coming in and carrying out their refrigerator or their couch on their backs. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. However, we recognize and appreciate the concern for pedestrian safety along this street, given that there's a school nearby and there can be pedestrian traffic there. So we're accepting the fact that those curb gutter sidewalk improvements are going to be required prior to establishing the commercial use. And traffic impacts at this site, according to this use, are basically non-existent. If you look at the Institute for Traffic Engineers trip generation manual, it calculates out to about 0.6 peak hour trips anticipated for this use. That lines up with, you know, the number of Patrons, they're expecting 5 to 10 over the course of a day. It's not going to be a very busy site, so impacts will be practically non-existent. So with that, I'll allow Mr. Palmer to introduce himself and tell you a little bit more about their business and his background here, but would really appreciate your favorable recommendation of this bill to the full council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pippin. Mr. Palmer.
Good morning again. Julie and I, we've owned Ross's Appliances on Oahu for about 20 years now. And we've been coming to the Big Island with our tent sales and bringing hotel furniture and low-cost items to people who can't really afford to buy new. Our big challenge has always been having a store here is the rents. The rents are just, they go up and up and up. We've had a store in Kaiwi Square in the old industrial down here, and it went on for a while. But it just, and the management, we weren't able, it was hard for us to control on Oahu. You know, it just seems like when we're here, everyone works hard. And then when I leave, I don't know if they sit down or what happens, but at the same time, we had a store in Hilo on Kainoi Lehua, the old Singer building, the old Hilo Hattie building. And this was maybe 25 years ago or so, but kind of the same thing. The rents went up and it was just difficult to manage. Now, in this case, we found this house and it's a really nice location. I mean, Kayao down there is just really nice. They got the new longs. It's just a perfect area. And our son, he's 26 years old. He's been working with us. He's moving out here. We bought a house out in HPP and we're renovating it and he's going to live out there. And the plan is he'll work in Kayao. No one's going to live at the house. It's just a store. And everything is, I think, going to work out this time. You know, we'll own the lot, we own the house, and you know, we've got our son in there who we trust, and he's a good boy, and we think it's going to work out real good. So, and we pray a lot, and I think it's going to be good. So that's the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer, for sharing that real personal tie to why this vision and why you're asking for this change of zone and how you're setting this up for your family. Thank you. With that, I'd like to open up for questions. Yes, Miss Leloy.
Thank you. You know, this is a unique area because myself, Councilmember Kaniali'i Kleinfelder, and then Councilmember Kirkowitz kind of intersect right here in KL. So just for the record, Mr. Pippin, and for the applicant, you've read and agreed to the conditions of approval that's outlined in Bill 183.
Yes.
Great, thank you. You know, I'm glad you raised that issue about the sidewalks because I know of HMSA and we're trying to create kind of a walking community, but you're right, nobody's gonna put a bed on their back to walk home. But I think it fits with the character of the community and then some of the other things that happen. I know Kamema schools, the schools around there, I think there's a church right towards the back there. And I also know that we actually run, well, not us, but the Boys and Girls Club runs an after school program down by the gym. So I actually do think this is a really good fit for the community. So with that, you know, I have, you know, you confirming that you have read the conditions of approval and agreed to them. I'm fine. I'm looking forward to hearing from my fellow colleagues who represent Puna, which is Mr. Kaniali'i Kleinfelder and then Ms. Kirkowitz when she comes back next council meeting. But I will be supporting this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Leloy. Mr. Kaniali'i Kleinfelder.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here today. Appreciate it. Good opening introduction on the project itself. The pedestrian access is key because you have a school, you have 7-Eleven, and as we push for, you know, safer access for Kikian community, and this really lines up. And there's, you know, this has been back and forth in different ordinances. You know, it's expensive, it's understood, but as part of the larger picture and for the community good, this is a great thing to do. So mahalo for doing the pedestrian access. As far as the project itself, I'm looking at my map right now. I mean, you're right next to 7-Eleven, correct? Okay.
Yes, correct.
And then renovations to the building won't be outside of the building's footprint as it is now.
So that was proposed as a condition to defer the improvements to curb gutter sidewalk. So since we're committing to curb gutter sidewalk, now right now, the plans as they are would just use the existing structure and its footprint, but that's not a condition within this ordinance. We're still gonna have to go through plan approval, showing that we meet setbacks and parking, landscaping, all the whole 9 yards. But we had proposed a condition that would defer the curb gutter sidewalks if we were just using the existing structure, nothing more.
Okay,
So
okay, understood,
just to
understood.
clarify things.
As far as the zoning request, I mean, you're in line with every plan that I've read so far. Everyone in the Cal area, the greater Cal area to Volcano, I mean, we need more commercial activity so that we are not sending people into Hilo and decreasing traffic on our roads. So this really falls in line with the overall future goal, future planning in my eyes for the area. So I'll be supporting this project today as well. And thank you for the introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Connie Kleinfelder. Anyone else at this time? No. I just want to, I'm sorry. Oh. Mr. Richards.
Thank you, Chair. I too, like Ms. Lilo, I wanted to hear a weigh-in of Mr. Connie Kleinfelder and all. From my view, from looking at this, I like the project. It adds economic growth, but it's being very mindful of the community and the access points that things have been discussed. So I'm going to be supporting this. I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. All right, and with that, I'll just wrap this up. I've always appreciated your stores. The concept of a circular economy and repurposing and reusing and providing opportunity for local people to access furniture and appliances at prices that are affordable, as well as, you guys take things that might otherwise end up in the landfill that don't need to end up in the landfill, that have another life. Really exemplifies the vision of a circular economy. And so just want to express my gratitude for that business model.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Yeah, so thank you for that, perpetuating that business model. And also, one of the things we talk about a lot up here and with the administration is the desire to be able to keep our kids, who are adults now, but keep them home. And so providing a good job with a family-owned business in a location that contributes to that community, I think is a really great model also to be replicated. So thank you for your vision in that capacity, and I'll be supporting this as well today.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay, we have 7 council members in favor, with 2, Councilmember Aaron Chung and Councilmember Ashley Kirkowitz excused today.
Thank you, Chair. And just for the record, the motion was to forward Bill 183 to council with a favorable recommendation.
Yes, please. Thank you very much. All right. May I have? It's been moved by Councilmember Leloy and seconded by Councilmember Connie Kleinfelder. All those in favor? Any opposed? We have 7 ayes with Councilmember Chung and Kirkowitz excused. We are now adjourned.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Testing 1, 2 to Lorena, the captioning provider. Testing 1, 2, are you there? Thank you, Lorena. It's good. Thank you very much.
Okay, aloha. Thank you for joining us. Today is June 14th, 2022. We are running a little behind schedule today. It is 10:59 a.m. Please excuse any delays this may have caused anyone. Today is the 37th session of the Committee on Finance. I'm calling this meeting to order. Today joining us here in the Kona Chambers, we have Ms. Heather Kimball, Ms. Miley David, Mr. Tim Richards, Mr. Holaka Inaba. To my left, Ms. Suli Loy, Mr. Aaron Brown, and then assorted members of the administrative staff. I am Matt Conneal E. Kleinfelder, Chair of the committee, and we are missing a few members, but they will be joining us shortly. Mr. Clerk, let's go to public testimony. Mr. Araceli, if you could.
Thank you, Chair. We'll check in with our remote sites first. Out in Pahoa, do we have any testifiers for the meeting? Oh. Doesn't seem like we have any testifiers.
Sorry, we have no testifiers here.
Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you.
And checking in with Waimea, do we have any testifiers from Waimea today?
Aloha, we have no testifiers for finance.
Thank you so much. Chair, I was informed that we may have a testifier in the Kona Chambers for this meeting.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, really. We have one testifier here.
We can take that one testifier now, if that's okay.
Okay, our first testifier is Thomas Vincent Keelan, and he'll be speaking on Bill 182. Mr. Keelan, you have 3 minutes when you start. Please turn on the mic, introduce yourself, and provide testimony. Thank you.
There you go. Oop. Sorry about that. My name is Thomas Vincent Keelan, and I live in Honoka'a. I drove down here today because I thought this was really important. I've been talking to my council person about this for some time now, and really excited that this has been put together. I'm trying to speak on behalf of, if I humbly could, the Kapona in the community. I don't know what the average life in the county of Hawaii is, but I'm guessing it's like 72 or 73 or something like that. I will turn 68 next month. I'm a retired teacher. I'm living on a pension and my Social Security. The pension's small. We're very frugal and try to keep our expenses down. Anything that would help us, especially in these times with what's going on with inflation, would be really a great help. I think this attacks part of that issue, and I'm hoping that you folks would seriously take it into serious consideration and possibly make it law. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Really, do you have any testifiers in Hilo?
Thank you, Chair. We have no in-person testifiers in Hilo, and we have one testifier via Zoom. Mr.
Okay,
Dwight
right.
Vicente, if you could unmute your mic by pressing *6, you'll have 3 minutes to provide your testimony starting now.
Morning, my name is Dwight Vicente, representing the Hawaiian Kingdom in this geographical jurisdiction. These lands that you are taxing, you're usurping jurisdiction over these lands because these lands that, like where I live on, was not illegally ceded in 1898 by the Banana Republic of Hawaii. These lands was under King Kalakaua 30-year lease contract, 1890 to 1920. So the state of Hawaii is Hawaiian Homes only, under the Northwest Ordinance of July 1787, not the U.S. Constitution. And it's questionable because there's no amendment to the Northwest Ordinance, nor is there any amendment to the U.S. Constitution to extend the U.S. jurisdiction beyond Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the U.S. Constitution. And by the way, the Northwest Ordinance is limited to the Ohio River Valley Indian Reserve. So these lands here is within the jurisdiction of the Hawaiian Kingdom. It has jurisdiction over these lands, whether it leases them out or taxes them, but there's native rights to these lands that go back to the 1848 Mahele. It recognized that the natives still have the right to live on the land, free of all taxation, and the right to, from the mountain to the ocean, and you can say into the ocean, to be on the land and in the water. These lands are not to be taxed by the county of Hawaii because they're limited to Hawaiian Homes, which is a questionable because it's under the Northwest Ordinance, and that is limited to the 1,750,000 acres of ceded land illegally ceded by the Banana Republic to the U.S. No such authority, no treaty. The U.S. never had a valid treaty from 1826 to the 1898 Joint Resolution Treaty of Annexation of the 1,750,000 acres of Crown and government lands. But the land I live on is the Crown lands that was under lease contract to the Waikea Sugar Plantation, which they sold illegally in 1917 as
30 seconds,
homesteaders,
please,
and
Mr.
they own the
Vicente.
land.
30 seconds, please. Thank you.
With this, I'll reserve the rights of this kingdom. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Chair, those are all the testifiers you have for your meeting today.
Mahalo, Mr. Araceli, appreciate it. Mr. Clerk, well, actually, this is a reminder for everyone, turn your phones to silent so we can have a nice, smooth meeting. And Mr. Clerk, if you would, please read in the first order of business for us.
Communication 30-30.30, report of fund transfers authorized May 1 through 15, 2022 from Controller Kate Oshiro dated May 24, 2022.
Chair, motion to close file on communication 30.30.
We have a motion by Ms. Leloy and a second by Mr. Inaba to close filing communication 30.30. Council members, discussion? Okay, seeing none. Motion is on the floor. All in favor? Any opposed? Mr. Clerk, you have 6 members in favor, and Mr. Chung, Ms. Karkowitz, and Ms. Villegas being excused. Next order of business, please.
Communication 31.37, report of change orders authorized May 1 through 15, 2022 for Finance Director Deanna Sacco dated May 23, 2022. Transmitted the above report pursuant to Hawaii County Code Section 2-12.3.
Chair, motion to close file on communication 31.37.
We have a motion by Ms. Leloy and a second by Mr. Inaba. Council members, discussion? No? Okay, I have one question. Ms. Sacco, are you a president of Chambers?
I believe she's not here today, Chair.
Oh, okay, good for her, good for her. Mr. Hunt, I see you on camera. You're next. Oh, or Diane, I'm sorry. Ms. Nakagawa, whoever wants to speak for the Department of Finance. Sorry, I'm not there. I can't see you. I can see you on camera.
Hi, I'm Keo Show, the controller for the county.
Mahalo, okay.
Good morning, council members. Diane Nakagawa, Deputy Finance Director.
Mahalo for joining us today. My question is regarding, and I like this, I just want to check in on this, the contracts with SPM and Centrax Adaptive. This is specific to the Highway 11 and Highway 130 intersection. And the question is, this is a state highway and a county controlled intersection. What is the cost that we're seeing here for this this contract number 009533?
Sorry, you want the original contract amount?
Just more so, what is this covering? And then this is a state highway. And I know there's a process between state and county for working on signalization. And when we have a kind of a multi-jurisdictional signal, and wanting to know what these costs are for.
Sorry, for those questions, we probably have to go back to Public Works since it's their contract. We can do that.
Okay, do we have anyone from Public Works?
We don't
Not
see
in
anybody at
Chambers.
this time.
Nobody's here.
Okay. I can follow up with them on my own. And we'll do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all the questions that I had. Thank you. Council members? Any further questions? Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. We have a motion on the floor to close file and communication 31.37. All in favor? Any opposed? Mr. Clerk, you have 7 members in favor, Mr. Chung and Ms. Kirkowitz being excused. Thank you. Next order.
Bill 182 amends Chapter 19, Article 10, Section 19-71 of the Hawaii County Code 1983, 2016 edition as amended relating to real property tax exemptions, increases the general exemption amount for property that is owned and occupied as a principal home, and adds new age ranges with corresponding exemption amounts to the schedule of exemptions for property owners of principal homes who are 60 years of age or older, introduced by Ms. Kimball.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Ms. Kimball, would you like to make the motion?
Yeah, motion to send Bill 182 to council with a favorable recommendation.
We have a motion by Ms. Kimball and a second by Ms. Leloy to forward Bill 182 to council with a favorable recommendation. Ms. Kimball, would you like to lead the discussion?
Yes, thank you. So I signaled when we had our conversation about the property tax rate resolutions that there was something else I wanted us to consider, which is another way to provide relief to our residents through a different mechanism that I actually feel is more targeted and more specific in terms of applying those benefits. Just to give a little bit of history, the base exemption, which is now at 40,000, that was last changed in 1991, which is over 30 years ago. So at this point, I'm proposing changing that base exemption to $50,000. The additional 20%, not to exceed 80,000, was implemented in 2005 and has also not changed since that date. It was applied with the 3% cap at that time to protect homeowners from the highly variable increases. So that's a little bit of history. When that 20% up to 80,000 was implemented, the median home price was about 400,000. So 20%, would be 80,000 of that median home price. So I'm proposing upping that to 100,000 so that 20% is roughly at the median home price, which is around 517. So 20%, 100,000 is 20% of 500,000. So that kind of gets us at that level. As far as how much this will cost us in terms of lost revenue, we have a sort of baseline estimate from RPT of about approximately 1.2 million. And there are some caveats with that. It is a little bit tricky to pull this out. So I wanted to make sure I was open about some of those caveats. It doesn't consider the impact of multiple home exemptions on a property, which is rare, but it can occur. It doesn't consider multi-class properties, but should have a minimal impact on the estimate. And it doesn't consider the impact on when only a portion of the property is eligible for home exemption. That might slightly decrease the estimate. There's a couple of reasons why I like this. First of all, it targets those that have home values that are less than the median. So, it's once you hit that median point or roughly median point of 500,000, you're just getting it's the same amount. It's about $200 at these values. for every home value above that 500,000. So what that means is, as a percentage of your home value, your savings is increased under 500,000. You're getting that full 20% savings. And then once you get above that median, your percentage of decrease declines. In addition, I've proposed adding a couple classes for the age-based exemptions. So adding one at 65 and one at 75. The justification for that is 65 is the point at which many people retire, so they are now on fixed income. And the comment about folks living a little bit longer. I did Google it while you were speaking. It's 82 years is the average life expectancy in our county, which is 3.5 years above average, by the way, for the country. So the idea of this is to really target those folks below the median income, providing the highest percentage relative to their overall home value. And I do have my spreadsheet here. So if any of you want to suggest alternative numbers, I can plug them in and share what that might look like. I did provide you guys in a communication a table that just kind of compared some of the rate adjustments with what this would look like. So it's in your Pinky folder. One of the things that I want to actually clarify on this, so you have the current rate as the top line, the mayor's proposed rate reduction for homeowners, and then the two resolutions that we've considered or will be considering. And then you have Bill 182. I also shared Bill 182, the values with respect to the various age groups. And this is not quite an apples to apples, oranges to oranges comparison. I wanted to be transparent about that. I should have compared it to the other proposals with the age deduction, and that is not on this spreadsheet, but I have that here if anybody wants to dive deep into that. The other thing, the last thing I'll mention, and I know my time went off, is the other thing that is nice about this approach is that it applies to other property classes other than the homeowner class. So as long as they are currently taking the homeowner exemption and they're using it as their primary residence, they can still take this exemption. So it would apply if they're on an agricultural property or if a portion of their home, it's a portion commercial or things like that. So it's benefiting a slightly larger pool. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I know we have members from RPT over in the Hilo chambers, but I'm looking for everyone's support to move this forward to council. Thank you.
Mahalo, Ms. Kimball. Council members, discussion. Ms. Levi, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to hear from Real Property Tax, Mr. Hunt or Lisa, maybe Lisa.
Good morning, Council. Lisa Muir, Real Property Tax Administrator.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. So for the administration, I understand from Deanna, who can't be here today, is that they do support this bill. And all the information that Councilwoman Kimball reported is correct. And that is based on the numbers that was run earlier. The only thing Real Property Tax wants to clarify for council, because we do have that half-year home exemption, is that even though this is effective January 1st of 23, if passed, the intent is for this to go to the 2023 tax year. So it would begin July 1st, 2023. And the members of the public won't see that exemption increase until their August 20 bill.
Thanks, Lisa. You're just so perceptive. My question really was, when would our constituents see the relief? So we wouldn't actually see this relief until next year, correct?
The way we read the bill, that's correct.
Okay. You know, Ms. Kimball, is that the intention, to give us some little bit of a breathing room? we have a few things going on. And I do support this in collaboration with some of the other things that, you know, this body has been discussing. It's the challenge though, right? To have this exemption, look at the rates, you know, all the classes. And so I just really wanted to understand from a, you know, bigger, broader and more complex perspective of our tax code. How do you see this working and being implemented?
Yeah, I thank you for that. And thank you, Lisa, for, oh, sorry, Chair, may I respond? Yes, okay, he's.
Sorry, I was reading the bill.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ms. Kimball.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying the implementation time period. So yes, this would apply to next year's valuations process, and therefore the savings would not actually, you know, they would hit August bill of 2023. And so that's a caveat to this in terms of this approach, is it's not immediate. And yes, it was my intention to do that. There's a lot of uncertainty right now, certainly about how things are going to go in the markets and whatnot. So I think in interplaying with all of these different things, as you mentioned, you know, thinking about it on that cycle, and there are some other things that I expect you and others to bring forward that I think contribute to this conversation. But yeah, I'll leave it at that at this point. But I think this is an important part of the mix, and that's why I introduced it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it's, you know, the tools that we have in the tool belt and the different levers that we can pull on, and this is one of them. And I really do appreciate that this provides a different class, which is that agricultural class, when they have actually home on it. This is another lever we can pull, but I'd also like to see it kind of in the mix, as you put, with some of the other things that we have discussed. I think we do have some time as we vet this and other things, we'll be able to provide relief to our different constituents throughout the different classes. I'm going to yield at this time till I hear from the rest of my colleagues. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Leroy. Mr. Richards?
Yes. Thank you. Thanks, Ms. Kimball. Listening to the conversation, and I agree with kind of the broad spectrum of what we're trying to accomplish here. You answered the questions: financial impact, why you chose the levels that you did, and trying to construct it so it was thoughtful. And I do like it because it is broad reaching, and but it's also mindful of trying to strike that balance in there. And so we do need to give some reprieve, and I'm very supportive of that. And I like how this is doing it, but it also is setting up for not just now, but for the future as we go forward. So I am supportive of this going forward. Thanks, Chair. I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Richards.
Sorry, I had one.
Ms. David, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And Ms. Kimball, just reading your proposal and your explanation. I think the group that you're trying to address and assist with what's going on as far as the rise in taxes everywhere is very notable. And I thank you for doing this, because I think as we talk about housing shortages and the inability of our kupuna and on maintaining their homes, this, I think, hits it and gives relief. I mean, although it's going to start, we have to allow the process to start. But I really thank you for doing this, because this, I can see, will really benefit the people that need the help right now. So thank you, and I will be supporting this. Mahalo.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Mr. Inaba.
Thank you. Ms. Kimbo, sorry, can you just clarify for me? This does allow those living on ag land or in the ag class to benefit?
Yeah, so anybody that is currently able to claim the homeowner's exemption would benefit from this. And so the homeowner's exemption is not exclusively tied to the homeowner class land type as far as the rates.
Got it. Thank you. I'll be supporting. Thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Mr. Inaba. Ms. Levi, right?
Thanks for giving me a second shot. You know, Lisa or maybe Steve, you know, this is kind of targeted in an age group. And I was just wondering, I mean, we know our kupunas need help, but I was also wondering or curious around just income levels, because some of these homeowners, you know, they've got really good retirements, not the testifier, you know, and trying to strike that balance. Just some thoughts around that.
Steve Hunt, Internal Control Manager. It is true that giving exemptions doesn't necessarily target income, and you can't equate age to income level. But what you can say, I guess, as a more generic statement, is exemptions are progressive, whereas rate relief is regressive. The greater benefits are going to be seen by those who have properties that are valued lower, and typically that's also a reflection of income level. So I think that is important to recognize, that when you are giving relief in the form of increased exemptions, those that are on the typical lower spectrum will be the greater beneficiaries, at least from a percentage of relief.
So then my follow-up question is to that who are outside of the age. How do we provide relief to those, you know, still at that maybe 40 to 60 age group who have lower income levels?
Chair, may I respond? Yeah. So that's actually that 80% of the value up to 100,000. So what that aspect of it means is that as a percentage of the home value, if you have a property value under the median home value, you will get that full 20% in benefit. Then once you go beyond the 500,000, that percentage of the value of your home decreases because you're capped at that 100,000. And so it's an indirect way to accomplish what you're talking about, providing a greater percentage of relief to the homeowners, that the income folks, regardless of age, that are under that median income. Whereas as it goes up to 1 million, 2 million beyond, it becomes a teeny percentage. Yeah.
Thank you. Not to oversimplify, but that's the catch-all. So we have the age areas with the exemptions, and then the 100,000 for the catch-all. Got it. I see them nodding. Steve, any other comments?
No, that's correct. So the bonus up is the age, but you're still getting the basic exemption under this bill. You're getting the moving from 40,000 to 50,000. Plus, if you can max out at your 20% up to another 100,000. So we're looking at basic exemptions for people whose homes hit that, you know, median price of 150,000, where they're currently at 120,000.
Great.
And you get the additional for age.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Lisa. Are you?
Welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Levi. Ms. Kimball?
Yeah, I'm just gonna make one final comment, and I'm just gonna ask Judge Strantz to give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Like I said, I did create a spreadsheet template. I'm hoping I can share it with you guys after this conversation. So if you want to play with any of these numbers and see how that affects the relative comparisons, then you can plug in whatever you want. Otherwise, I'm happy to plug it in right now. But, I think that that's still a discussion point. I just boilerplate some numbers that made sense to me, but it's something to consider as you review this bill. So Judge Trans, can I share that spreadsheet with everybody, or is that violation of sunshine? It's just got all the formulas built in. Share. It's sitting on my computer. I don't know how to do it. You know what? Think about what you want. If you want me to plug it in next meeting for something, I will do that. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Mahalo, Ms. Kimball. Okay, council members, any further discussion? Okay, I have a few questions for Ms. Miura. So I'm looking at this. I mean, folks who want to utilize the exemptions will have to apply and be the correct age. So I don't expect you to have numbers off the top of your head, but I mean, just on the other side of the equation, what is the potential? I don't want to say loss, but what is the loss for the county on this if we were to move forward?
It's estimated to be at 1.2 million. There would be no new applications that need to be filed because as we collect the homeowner exemption applications now, they already provide the birth dates. So they're already in our system.
Okay. 1.2 million per year.
Correct.
Okay. Well, in my eyes, I think that's very acceptable. What I really like about this, even though it's gonna, I actually wish it would take place sooner and go into effect sooner to the maker of the bill. But I like that, and as I've grown older, and I watched some of my kupuna and the different families in my district start to have to rely on a set income, as we've seen prices across the board just go crazy. And although that could change, what I am seeing is I would hope that we can provide our residents some security as they get older and not have to be concerned about if they can live or not. And I think this bill starts to address that issue. And our testifier here in Kona today, you came in during our budget hearings. You were very outspoken. I really appreciated your testimony to that effect. So, yeah. So I appreciate the intention of the bill. I'll be supporting this today. And well done. Okay. Mr. Chung joined us. Mr. Chung, did you have something to add?
Yeah, thank you. And I wanted to thank our Deputy County Clerk for keeping me abreast of this matter all the way until I return. I wanted to, I'm glad I had a chance to speak at the committee level instead of just having it at the council level, because I certainly support this measure. It's, in keeping with the times, it's just an adjustment. But I did want to give some thoughts, and I don't know if anyone really has the guts to do this, but maybe I can't even say that I do. But I think at some point when we're dealing with these homeowner exemptions, we might want to consider who we're trying to help. And what I'd like to see, ideally, in my opinion, is for this homeowner exemption, over a certain age, to be tied into the years that a person had their homeowner exemption. Because I'm not real keen on, not picking on anybody who wants to move to Hawaii. That's terrific, I guess. But coming here, buying a new home, and then immediately getting a home exemption only because they're a senior citizen. I don't get it. I really don't. So that's all I wanted to say. But I do support this. Yeah. Thank you.
Mahalo, Mr. Chung. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we do have a motion on the floor to forward Bill 182 to council with a favorable recommendation. All in favor? Any opposed? Mr. Clerk, you have 8 members in favor, Ms. Kirkowitz being excused. We have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Inaba, second by Ms. Leela. Council members, discussion? Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All in favor of adjourning? Any opposed? You have 8 members in favor of adjourning. Ms. Kirkowitz being excused. We are adjourned. It is 11:33 a.m. Mahalo.
Want to know what the financing department wants.
Aloha and welcome to the Committee on Human Services and Social Services. This is our 19th session. Today is June 14th, 2022, and the time now is 11:37. Here in the Kona chambers, we have Council Member Kimball, Villegas, David, Inaba, Kleinfelder. I am Sue Lee Loy, Chair of this committee, with Mr. Chung, Mr. Richards, and Ms. Kirkowitz excused at this time. With that, Relly, do we have any statements from the public on the agenda items?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly noting, you have no Zoom testifiers, no in-person testifiers here in Hilo Chambers. So checking with our remote sites in Waimea. Amy, do we have any testifiers for today?
We do not have testifiers for this committee.
Thank you so much, Amy. And just noting that we lost connection with Pohoa, but we were noted that there were no testifiers there. In the Kona Council chambers, do we have any testifiers for this meeting?
Good morning, Riley. We have no testifiers here in Kona.
Thank you, sir. Madam Chair, we have no testifiers for your meeting today.
Thank you, Relly. With that, I'll be closing statements from the public on the agenda. Mr. Clerk, communications, please.
Communication 633.7, additional grant and aid awards to nonprofit organizations for fiscal year 2022-2023 from Human Services and Social Services Chair Susan L.K. Liloy, dated June 7, 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'm going to need a motion to close file on communication 633.7.
So, second.
Thank you. That's been a motion by Mr. Inaba, a second by Mr. Kaniali'i Kleinfelder. Thank you, gentlemen. Just to level set everyone and remind everybody kind of what's been going on. During our budget process, we put in an amendment that covered all the grant and aid. However, we haven't programmed the balance of the money. And what this communication is intended to do is really start that conversation. And I'm not sure if my colleagues, we also have another communication 633.8. And if you guys don't have it, please let me know. I just would love to kind of open up the conversation. What happens from here is whatever we decide, because we did our work with the budget to amend the various applicants who were eligible but not awarded, we would have to direct that to the administration, and then the administration would come back with a budget amendment to include the various applicants that were eligible but not awarded. Ms. Kimball.
Yeah, just first, we don't have that communication yet, so I don't know if that's pending. You know, we are in the process of you know, evolving the GIA application process, and ultimately also the contracting and contract monitoring. And you know, I think that the process that we went through was robust, but still needing some fine tuning and some development. I'm pleased that we're going to be putting more money towards funding these different organizations. And I'm pleased that we were able to use some of the homeless funding for some of the particular applicants, because that is the space that they work in. And I think this is a great sort of compilation of different objectives and different ideas. So, you know, at this point, I think I'm interested to hear from the rest of the body, particularly those that weren't part of the ad hoc on this. You know, these are all great programs. Every program that applies for a grant from us, they're all doing really important work in the community. And so being able to benefit more than our just 2.5 million, I think is fantastic. You know, I had some reservations, which I expressed when we talked about the report and the findings of the ad hoc, about some of the folks that I didn't feel had accomplished a high quality application in line with what would be appropriate for a grant request from the county, or their budget request really didn't align with what their program outcomes suggested that they would be accomplishing with those funds. You know, one of the ways that we can deal with that moving forward is if we choose to fund all these programs, is with the grant monitoring, with the contracts, and making sure that the contracts make it clear what their benchmarks are, what their achievements need to be in order to receive this funding moving forward. Similarly, you know, if they're given X amount of dollars through the contract, we can make it very clear the level that we expect that those to be used. So, you know, the contract monitoring, I think, is going to be a heavier lift this cycle because of this. If we choose to, you know, do the fund the whole batch, but it is a mechanism I think we can use to make sure that all of our funds are being spent properly, and we are contributing as we should be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Kimball, Diane, I think Diane or Ted is also in our Hilo chambers. And speaking to the point that Ms. Kimball mentioned is, we have all the money set aside, but as she mentioned, some of the applications, we had some reservations on and it was reflective in their scoring. However, we saw a lot of extra money this year in our budget and was able to make that amendment. And as she mentioned, some of the guardrails that we would love to see could be done with the contract itself. And so Diane, yeah. Thanks, Diane, for being here. This again is very different than what we've done in the past in the ad hoc committee, just because of the transition that we're going through. Diane, thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Good morning again.
So help walk the council through this kind of process that we're in, because we've already established the budget. We set aside some monies beyond the $2.5 million. And these were the applicants that were just eligible, but not contained in our award during our process.
Correct. So as you explained, the budget appropriation is set as the total in those areas. So just to remind everyone, we have 3,115,000 grants to nonprofit organizations. And then we added the 260,000 for grants and aid and homelessness. So at this point, we're looking for your direction on how to program those funds. And I think that's where we're at today. As you mentioned, the homeless grant and aid, we need to know those that will be served under the 260,000 and then the remaining under the 3.115 million.
Thanks, Diane. And I apologize, that's contained in that communication 633.8. Mr. Clerk.
Just wanted to let you guys know there's copies of that communication coming very shortly.
With your indulgence, I don't mind taking a short recess so everybody can take a look at it, unless there's any council members that want to offer comment at this time. Mr. Kaniali Kleinfelder.
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate communication 633.7 because this is what I had to do last time, going to that list of who was qualified but who didn't get awarded. And this, as far as I can see, is the list of programs that did not get awarded but were qualified. And then the back page being the programs that are specific to homelessness. And just to clarify, these are coming out of the funds that we set aside via earlier legislation specific for homeless. Yeah.
That's correct. So as a reminder, that was the 2-tier that Mr. Chung introduced. And so these programs are directly in alignment with homelessness. And so the accessing those funds, those programs would be eligible based on our legislation that we passed for that.
Okay, wonderful. I think just overall, I mean, some of these folks had other programs that were awarded funds, but some of these organizations didn't receive anything. And I really do believe in some of these folks. And I'm unsure as to the reason why they didn't get funding. That was the purpose of the committee. But I would say that I know some of these folks and I know what they do in our community, and I'm always impressed by what they do and what they offer. So I'm really glad to see that they're being awarded some funding, and I appreciate this body's willingness to go back and take a look and address that. So thank you for bringing this forward today. I look forward to seeing the next communication, the 623.8. I yield for now.
Thank you, Mr. Kaniali. Mr. Richard. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. David.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for Diane. Diane, thank you for being here today. And since Deanna is not around, with the additions or the additions of the applicants in this process, what is your time frame the finance department's time frame in getting all of this within your timelines of processing these additional applications. Could you just generally let us
Sure,
know what
sure.
your timing
So-
will be?
Absolutely. So it's my understanding that it's, we're a little late this year in getting them specifically in. So if you look at the budget on the total appropriation, you also have the individual line items for each of those nonprofit organizations. And what, as I mentioned earlier, we would need to do is go ahead and create the accounts for each of those specific nonprofits. So we're looking for direction fairly quickly to, if awarded, turn around and go ahead and insert and do an amendment to actually put the total dollar amount to each of those nonprofits.
And how much time do you think, could you estimate how much time you would need in order to finalize this?
And if Ted's on, if he could jump on as well, he's more familiar with the process. Ted Schray, our budget manager. But in talking with him this morning, if we got the award recommendations today, we could work on the amendment this week.
I see. And all this would need to be finalized or at least get to our agenda on the next, when would that be, Mr.
If you
Clerk?
don't mind me stepping, I think the deadline to hit the agenda is this Thursday.
I see, that's a deadline for the July 1st, okay.
That's what I was believe we're working onto as well.
Wow, okay. Well, I really feel for you folks as far as getting all this stuff. It's very important. I mean, these are all necessary things and we've already gone through the amendments. And I'm just wondering whether there's enough time for everybody to do what they need to do. And I'm certainly willing to assist in any way I can. I see Ted there. Ted, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, hi, this is Ted Schray, budget guy. So if a decision is finalized today, your LRB would need to get the information with the additional accounts, the additional programs to finance basically as soon as possible, because a lot of new accounts actually need to be generated and created. You also have to designate which accounts, whether they're part of the original awards or part of the new ones that will be paid for out of the homelessness account. And those would all be new accounts. Again, because if we're going to meet the deadline on Thursday to get this transmitted, that information would need to be in our hands by the end of the business day. That way, tomorrow, accounts can probably spend a few hours, which is what it takes to generate the accounts. And once the accounts are designated and created, then we would need to prepare a bill listing all of the new programs that's not a lump sum, that show that so it'll be in the budget, and that just takes as long as it takes.
Yeah, and so that would be generated by finance, the bill you're speaking of, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Because we would have to amend the current budget, which only
Right.
has a big pot, and we'd have to specify which programs get how much money.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for that summary on the time frame. I kind of figured that we were really behind the gun on this one, and I just wanted to get some sense of just how much you folks are gonna have to deal with in the next few days. So, thank you, Ted. Thank you, Diane, for that information. And now I think we got, our the six. Okay. So before and I won't speak anymore after this, but I do have a question. Just for clarification, I'm trying to get my, okay, 633.7. And this one is, this particular communication, Chair, is accounting for the 875 that we just approved in the last budget, right? 633.7. Okay, got it. Now, and
Ms.
this is,
David, if I could clarify, so eligible was not awarded as Mr. Kaniali
right,
summarized. And then that's Exhibit A,
right,
but Exhibit B would be the programs that would be eligible from that two-tier tax that we passed,
Right.
Mr. Chung's
Mr.
bill,
Chung's one.
and
Okay.
these programs. So it's kind of a, they're gonna
It doesn't-
access
yeah.
a different source of
Sources.
funds.
Right, okay, that part. And now, 633.8 is,
Chair, if you don't mind, we would have to move that
oh, I see,
particular
right, right,
communication
okay.
in.
Before we do that, then
mhm.
my last question. So the 633.7 that we're talking about right now, this, the 875 is in addition to 633.6, totaling 2,565,000. Okay, perfect. Now I know where I'm going. I yield for now. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Ms. David, thank you for having Ted and Diane walk out the timing on it, because there's two things that's going to happen in parallel, the paperwork for the budget, but we also have to notify the applicants, and that deadline is August 31st. So what we'd like to do is set the funding and put in the various line items that go into the budget. And yes, I will acknowledge we are at the 11th hour here, which would give them time to then notify the applicants by the August 31st deadline. Thank you, Mr. Corneli.
Mahalo, Chair. Just quick question regarding 633.7. And it would bleed over into 0.8 as well, but the Lokahi Treatment Centers and Hawaii Island Home for Recovery, they're all listed as TBD, to be determined. What does that mean? Besides the obvious.
Yeah, that's definitely up for discussion. Those, and I'm gonna be checking in with staff real quick on those. Those were the ones that fell below the cutoff mark that we had. And basically for us as a body to decide the exact amount for those programs.
Okay, so the total on the bottom then for 633.7 on page 1 of Exhibit B right now does not include funding Lokahi Treatment Centers, Hawaii Island Home for Recovery. Those two programs with, those two organizations with about 7 different programs. So
That's
this-
correct.
And this body would need then to choose whether or not to fund them for the additional $140,000, no, $240,000. Correct? Can you give us some direction on why they were not funded and what brought them below the minimum?
Yeah, I'm gonna speak from the ad hoc. It really was the scores. We, as a body, had scored everybody. I know personally for me with Lokahi Recovery, I had scored them a little higher. And just because of the great work that they do as it relates to drug and drug addiction. But you know, as we averaged out the scores, they ended up falling below that that cutoff mark. Anyone else from the ad hoc? Ms. Kimball.
Yeah, just to describe the scoring, you know, it was, you know, what is your program going to accomplish? What are the measurements that the targets that you're going to hit? What is the budget? We each individually scored all of the different programs ourselves, and then we combined those scores and averaged them. So without without the book in front of me, I couldn't give you like, this is what they said that didn't kind of line up, but that's just kind of generally, we scored based on this, then we picked the threshold, which was at like 60%. And that's what happened, is they fell below that, the threshold.
Okay. On behalf of an organization that I know does a lot for Bohoa, which is directly in my district, and I really would speak on behalf of Lokahi, and especially given what you will see when you drive around Bohoa town, which is a lot of folks who need help, and there's a big need in the community, and they deal directly with those folks. So, you know, I would push for them to get funded. I guess that's as short and sweet as I can put it. Okay, I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Kaniali. And you know, all is not lost. This, just because they serve the homeless population and they're not getting funding from us, they can directly contract with housing also, because that's what the money was for. And that was always the intentionality, is not only housing using those funds, but being able to contract services that touch the homeless population. Mr. Inaba, I see your light on.
Yeah, there's been a lot of questions and a lot of answers, and I'm still a little bit confused. So is the recommendation Exhibit A as contained in
Thank you.
633.8? Because 633.8 is just a correction of 633.7. Is that right?
Correct. And if, you know, we want to move that in for conversation, let's go ahead and do that. And I would need a motion.
Okay. Do we, just a regular, Mr. Clerk, motion to close file?
Amendment.
I think you guys could make a motion. Well, one option would be to make a motion to amend communication 633.7 with the contents of 633.8, which would bring it on the floor. You guys can then openly discuss that communication.
This 633.8, however, is not done in the way of an amendment, right? It's almost a replacement. So is that still how we would proceed?
If you guys did not want to, if you guys didn't want to replace 633.7 with the contents of 633.8, I think we could,
Or do we just withdraw the current motion and then?
because we need a motion to bring it to the floor. You know what? I'm going to, do you mind if we take a quick recess, Chair? I'm going to consult with our county clerk and our corporation counsel, see if we can make sure that we're doing this cleanly and correctly.
Hello, I'm sitting here. We don't need to take a recess if that's all right.
Mr. Hendricks, please.
You can. It's difficult because 633.8 is not on the agenda. 633.7 is, and Mr. Inaba is correct. It's not a traditional amendment. It would be replacing its contents. But you could use a motion to amend to, in essence, bring it to the floor and discuss it and effectuate it, if you will, so that it could be used to provide a recommendation for the purposes of providing the guidance we've been talking about to create the amendment. The good news is, you know, if there is kind of a notice issue here, yeah, because we don't have 6338 on the agenda. We had 633.7, which spelled out the numbers. So there is a little bit of a notice issue there if it's done that way, but that can be reconciled by the fact that whatever is decided, hopefully today, but if not today, you know, sometime in the future, we'll come back to the council in the form of that budget amendment that Ms. Nakagawa, Mr. Shrey were talking about. So there'll be time for, it's not final today. It comes back as a budget amendment, which of course, public meetings, testimony and more deliberation by the council at least 2 times at council. So I think the cleanest thing to do, although not traditional, maybe not ideal practices, would be to move to amend communication 633.7 by replacing it with communication 633.8.
All right, thank you, John. So with that, I'll make a motion to amend the contents of communication 633.7 with the contents of communication 633.8. Sorry, that wording was strange.
Thank you. I need a second, please. Okay, Mr. Clerk, we have a motion to amend communication 663.7 with the contents of communication 633.8 by Mr. Inaba, a second by Ms. David. Mr. Inaba.
Thank you. All right, so being that these, let me ask the question. 633.8 is a correction of 633.7. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And maybe for clarification purposes, Mr. Clerk, and maybe even Ms. Strands, maybe clarifying the motion that we're amending communication 633.7 with the exhibits contained in communication 633.8, because that's what's being corrected is exhibit A and exhibit B.
This is Mr. Henriksen Hilo. I think that's a good clarification and specification that the exhibits are being replaced with adjusted information.
Do I need to withdraw the current motion then?
I think the chair just, if without any objections to the rest of the committee, the chair just revised the motion on the floor or corrected it or whatever the case, clarified, I should say, clarified the motion successfully.
Okay, thank you. So proceeding then with exhibit A. What is the difference here? Because I'm looking at the total. Yeah, what is the difference between these two exhibit A's? Is it just that one has a total and one doesn't?
That was helpful for finance. We did the total for finance to make it nice and clean.
Okay, no, let's try again. 875,000 is the total in both exhibit A's. So is there any difference between exhibit A and the two communications?
No.
Okay, so exhibit A remains the same, correct?
A.
A is the same, so we're not doing both, just B. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and the only difference between the two Bs is 20,000, and that is, where is that difference? What has caused that difference?
The Hawaii Island Home for Recovery between the two TBAs. Did I do that right?
Is it, okay, so the sum, the total was just incorrect, but the
Correct.
line items were the same. So just the total is the only difference we're talking about here. Is that right? Yes.
That is correct.
Okay. With that, then I see that Lokahi, and this is where perhaps, okay, I think we're on the same page right now. The Lokahi treatment centers are listed on both pages, both in Exhibit A and Exhibit B. Exhibit A gives, it's an award. Exhibit B, it's to be determined. So can you please clarify what's going on between these two pages? Exhibit A versus Exhibit B.
Thank you for that. Because Lokahi treats homeless, we provided them funding through the 875, but they could actually shift over And if that is the recommendation of the body, then we can cover them there and everybody's covered.
But if we
Either way, they're gonna be covered. We just have to make that distinction if we want them to access the funds on that side.
okay, but we did account for them in the 875.
That's correct, Mr. Inaba.
Okay. Well, with that, then I would prefer to have it left as part of the 875. Because it's just cleaner, and if we covered everybody with the 875 budget amendment, then I think we should leave it where it is in Exhibit A instead of separating it out. So I would then agree with the recommendation in Exhibit A in Communication 633.8. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Inaba. Thank you for helping everybody walk through all of that. Ms. Villegas.
Yeah, thank you guys for going through this whole process and for all the efforts that have been made to make it more objective by utilizing a numerical system of grading. I have a lot of concerns and some heartache about this process and how I think that the key component to this whole process is partly a big part of it is the interviews, and it is meeting with the people who are doing the work. And the expectation that they would be excellent grant writers, I don't think is necessarily fair. Nor have I seen in my experience that that's actually a capacity. It's a very challenged capacity for a lot of our nonprofit groups. I mean, we as a county don't even have professional grant writers to help us secure some of the funding so necessary. So there just seems to have been a number of glitches, regardless of the intention, to expedite this. As I said before, I want everybody to get funded. I want everybody to have all the money that they need in order to be successful in all the projects that the priceless work that they do serving our community. But I have questions about making promises to organizations that they will get full funding on a project. If we were held to a strict budget, we would fail at this. This is way beyond. And I think part of that challenge came in the commitment of fully funding projects. So I would just ask that as we move into the next budget cycle, we reconsider that. And it gives me a little bit of heartburn that we've created this opportunity for funding for homeless projects. And now here we are dipping into it to compensate for making up for some shortfalls and some over promising in this grant and aid process. So I think in the best interest of all of these organizations, I want to see them funded, and I want everybody moving forward to be able to benefit from the expanded budget resources we have. But I do have concerns, and as Corp Counsel Ms. Strantz has pointed out, while it may not create precedent, legally, it creates a slippery slope. And once again, in times of bounty, it's wonderful, but I just get worried for those that then have to or get to sit in this grant and aid ad hoc in future, when they won't be able to provide this much abundance, as there are lean times, but that would be harder on them. So I am willing to support this, but I just needed to share the parts of this that give me a bit of heartburn and have me calling and questioning on the wisdom of making these kind of promises as we move forward. So with that, I yield.
Thanks, Ms. Villegas. Mr. Richards.
Thank you, Chair. I actually take a different tact on this. And first of all, I want to commend the ad hoc committee for working on this and bringing it forward and looking at it from a very different perspective. Having been involved with grant and aid for numerous years and looking at funding, it's difficult when the needs are so high and the resources are limited. And there is a opportunity now to actually get some funding because of the things we don't need to reiterate. But one of the problems that we struggled with in previous GIA was trying to make sure we got the funding and the additive effect of having synergy between the groups. And that's something that this ad hoc has worked on going forward. Also, and with all due respect, Ms. Villegas, having the professional grant writers, I don't think this thing is set up for that. A better grant writer, sure, will communicate better, but that's what this is all about. And that's why I like the idea of trying to fund and dipping a little bit deeper if things qualified. So that's recognizing the challenges we're coming forth. And I don't think we're setting a precedence at all. I think we are capitalizing on some things that we can do. And I like the groups. I mean, these are recurrent names that really help out the community going forward. So I see that as a big bonus coming forward for our community as a whole. So I fully support this going forward. And I'm really excited to look at the next cycle when the information and the templates that have been set up, we're starting to get that information back and seeing that cross-pollination, that synergy coming forth. So I think that's where the magic in this is going to be coming. And so I fully support this going forward. Thank you, Chair. I yield.
Thanks, Mr. Richards. Ms. Kimball.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to just comment about something that Councilmember Villegas said, and this was particularly around the full versus partial funding. And I want to actually put it out to the rest of the group that we're not in the ad hoc. The logic behind that was that if we asked nonprofits to say exactly what they needed, and we gave them exactly what they needed, they wouldn't have to reinvent the budget. That was kind of the logic. Understanding that that's a different process, and it is not abnormal for grant programs to say, we've had more applicants than expected, so we're only going to do partials and things like that. I think there was, having been previously a board member of some of the nonprofits that applied for GIAs, it was the understanding that you asked for 10 knowing you'd get 5. And that was just kind of the thing. So I'd like to put it out to the other members of the body that are not on the ad hoc. Is that a good assumption? Should we, I liked it because it's nice and clean. You ask for this, you get this, you don't have to redo your budget. That was just kind of the thought process behind it. And this is more geared towards next time. So that's question 1. Question 2, or idea 2 is, respect the whole analysis process, the rating process, it does need work, and I'll acknowledge that. And I think that having Dr. Holika Anaba, who's I'm sure very experienced with rubrics and scoring and all of that stuff from his educational training, I think is really going to help improve that even more. I understand the concern about being completely analytic, and I think there's ongoing need for a continuing discussion as we move forward for the next one about how much of the subjective element do we bring in. Oh, we know those guys do good work. Well, I think we have to ask ourselves, well, why didn't that show in the rubric? Why didn't it show that show in our measuring system? And then how much are we gonna let sort of an immeasurable perception guide the decision making? And it's, for me, the reason to move towards a more analytic numerical approach is mostly about transparency and just not making it clear that we're not playing favorites. But in order for it to be successful, it needs to be a well-defined, good system. And I think we're not quite there yet, but I'm hopeful that we have some smart minds and are going to get a little closer this next time around. But I think that's an ongoing discussion, and I hope everyone will feel comfortable contributing to what we need to do there. But anyway, thanks, Chair. I yield.
Thank you, Ms. Kimball. Anyone else? Just clarifying, this is our recommendation so that finance can go ahead and make that budget amendment. And as the clerk mentioned, we'll have opportunities. Mr. Kaniali, I see your light on. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Kimball, for saying what you said. I do believe that as I watched this program just in my short time here on the council, classically, we don't get everything that we ask for. Not we as a county, but the nonprofits. And so I think they became accustomed to asking for more programs and asking for more funding, knowing that they get a portion of it. So my guess is there's a lot of funding that's going to go to these programs this year, and they may be hard pressed to spend it all, given what they thought they would have. It would be interesting to see on the back end of a comprehensive review of what was expended, what wasn't, just to see how it sat and what the reality is of the ask versus what's used. That's my thoughts on your question one. Question two, I mean, you guys kind of rewrote the book, and there's always more than one way to skin a cat. So, I mean, this is where we're at this year. I think we learned a lot going into next year. It can get better, it can be worse. I mean, who knows? But I think there's been a lot of good discussion to date. I think at the end of the day, everyone got full funding. This is kind of an unprecedented situation that we sit in right now, in my eyes, as far as my time here. It may not be the same next year or in 2 years from now as the economy goes up and down. So I would be cautionary in moving forward just with the same idea. Oh, we'll just fully fund everybody who comes in, because that may not lay out next year at all. So glad we could get everybody covered. Thank you for going back and reviewing this and getting our nonprofits funded. I think this is huge for our community right now, and I'll be supporting this as it is. And Mr. Inaba's comment regarding Exhibit A versus Exhibit B, I would have to, I agree with that recommendation for the funding coming from the 875 versus the homeless funding. I'd really like to see that homeless funding be utilized for exactly what it was set up to be for, which is not out of line with your Exhibit B. Just I see that funding go through something amazing on that end. So thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Kaniali E. Kleinfelder. Mr. Inaba.
Okay, yeah, and I just want to state for the record, there is a lot of work to be done here, and I'm gonna, like I said, support this recommendation, even though I have reservations about having reviewed, and I think Councilmember Kimball said this, having reviewed some of these applications. But at this point, we made the amendment to the budget, and it makes sense to follow through. So with that, I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Inaba. I know Ms. Nakagawa has some comments also.
Thank you. I just wanted to bring up another point of clarification. In Communication 633.6, the total awarded amount presented was for a total of 2.565, so 2,565,000. In 633.8, we did add the 875 of the newly awarded programs. This would bring us $65,000 over our budget amount of $3,375,000.
So we have extra. Oh, sure.
There's 65,000 over that's programmed than in the appropriation amount in the budget. unless 633.8 took into account the 65,000 from 633.6 of that program. But if not, then the total awarded in 633.6 was 2,565,000. Then we added 875 in 633.8.
Thanks, Diane, for that.
You're
I
welcome.
think I'm gonna have to take a recess and look at my notes on that one.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm gonna put this meeting in recess real quick, 10 minutes, quick. Thank you.
Okay, so can you do the mic? Okay, I think.
There we go, taking this committee on Human Services and Social Services out of recess. The time now is 12:31. I think we have some options here. And what I'm going to be doing is making a recommendation that we put this meeting in recess until the end of our council meeting tomorrow, because we have some other moving parts. And I think Ms. Nakagawa is there in chambers to help walk us through. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So in talking through the different options on how to get through this today, the difficulty is we have an item on the agenda tomorrow that deals with our property tax rate. So until we get through that, we can't make a commitment on any funding that's over the appropriation amount today, as we discussed.
Thanks for that. So again, my recommendation is we go ahead, put this meeting in recess to the end of council tomorrow. We will have made the business decision on what the rates are and any future budget amendment recommendations that this communication drives will be nice and clean. So please, any council member.
Before we start discussion, I just want to make a comment. I would recommend, for the public's sake and proper notice for the public that if you guys do decide to recess tomorrow, set a specific time so the public knows. Yeah, that's always recommended.
Mr. Richards.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think as Chair, you can just recess. We don't need to motion any of this stuff. And I like what Clerk has said this, set a time. And if for some reason we bump up against that, we can, Council Chair, if we could just adjourn that council so we could report that and then go back. So yeah, I think that's a real good way to handle that because it'll keep it real clean, real clear. So I fully support that, Chair. So do it.
Any other comments? Mr. Clerk, this meeting, the Committee on Human Services and Social Services is in recess till tomorrow, June 15th at 1 o'clock.
Yes, Chair, that's up to you.
Thank you.